When most of my friends think of the term art house, they usually think something hipstery and avant-garde, maybe even something a bit, abstract, boring even. I don't blame them, honestly, because many films that are part of Roger Ebert's Great Movies list, for instance, are either entertaining or neither actually entertaining or deep, and just kind of like there for historical purposes or because Ebert even liked them and they're not really actually good. Either way, I don't think, since I didn't know the concept of what an art house film was until recently, since I've watched so many art films, I can really understand really where they're coming from. But having watched so many movies in general, I know enough that I think that there are some art house movies out there that it would appeal to a mainstream audience. Kind of like a gateway into the more complex stuff, maybe if they want to go there, or just to, expand their palette a little bit. So I picked 5 great movies I think anyone would like. So, number 5, Where the Wild Things Are. This film came to my attention through surfing the channel Awesome Wiki's page about Doug's top 20 movies list. On it, out of all the movies that Doug had, he said the 2 movies that he would add from the modern era was 2009's Where the Wild Things Are, and the second one was Inside Out. That being said, if you're concerned that this is a kids' film, don't be. I'd say it succeeds both being a film for older children and adults without being a film for nobody in particular, if that makes any sense. Because there's some films like out there, like the Speed Racer movie that I reviewed with Drew. I'd say this is a bit of a film that's hard to explain to an outsider why it works. It's kind of like recording a dream, and it kind of is very imaginative and a kind of less complex Adventure Time kind of way, more like a movie like Paper House, which was a 1988 British movie. That's another movie I recommend, but it's a lot like a dream. It's really not like the book, except in superficial ways. I think Spike Jonze kind of used that as a promotional tool, but I think that other than that, I think the movie completely works. Number 4, Paprika. Many people know this film as the movie that Christopher Nolan supposedly ripped off to make Inception. Either way, even if that's not true, I personally prefer this film to that film, since it feels at times you're watching, again, like Where the Wild Things Are, a recorded dream. Instead of, in the case of Inception, like scenes from a James Bond movie, which I kind of didn't really care for. For me, even though this is yet the only Satoshi Kon film I have ever watched yet, Kon at his best feels like a lost second Miyazaki, especially when he's trying to put so much detail in a single scene. Lastly, it has a sort of deep element that's driven by the fact the film is all about to access dreams, and they kind of remind me of The Matrix. Really, I'm surprised I hadn't heard of this film sooner when I was watching movies nonstop, but I'm glad I have watched it. Oh, one more thing. There's kind of a weird scene, middle part of the movie, where the main character is exploring the apartment of the character, Dr. Kosaku Torika, was the inventor of DC Mini, which is the device they use to access films. Some of the stuff that's in his apartment is kind of has unfortunate implications. So viewer discretion advised. A lot of Satoshi Kon's films are dark, and a lot of the things that are acceptable in Japan are not really acceptable here. You've been warned. I mean, just watch it for yourself. Number 3, Seven Samurai. This is a number 1 favorite for many, and I understand why. The acting is excellent, and if you know who Toshiro Mifune is, this is one of his debut films, and no, not his very first, and one of the best uses of him in a Miyazaki, in a Kurosawa movie, in my opinion. The experimental, at the time, approach to action works perfectly, in my opinion, and on top of that, it's pretty educational for movies set in a period where, at the time, many Japanese filmmakers weren't touched, and that's, I think, the 17th century Civil War era period, or something like that. If you want to watch this movie for any reason, again, watch for Toshiro Mifune's character arc, which is pretty interesting. I think he's kind of more or less the main character in a movie of 7+ people. It's also a great primer on how to write a movie about multiple people in the same movie, so that's another recommend for you. Number 2, Come and See. Honestly, if it weren't for Apocalypse Now, this would be my favorite war film. This isn't all that gory, but it's pretty scary and realistic, not to mention pretty historically accurate from what I understand. Looking back, trying to remember what makes it so great, it just makes me remember that it works simply because it was well done, even though it was actually done during the last days of the Soviet Union on like a complete shoestring budget. Although probably one of the best Russian movies ever made, Russian war films and war films in general be made. Come and See is a gateway not into Arthouse in general, but into Russian films. And even though I think that maybe people won't like dive into someone like Tarkovsky, I think it's better to be exposed through Soviet and Russian cinema this way than in No Reason. I think it's just one of those more, not crowd pleaser movies, but just it works better. Number 1, Brazil. Whenever I introduce the concept of my favorite movie, I kind of introduce it as 1984 as a comedy or something around that. You know, it is much more than that. The reason why it's hard to go wrong with Brazil is because it succeeds on so many levels. So if people won't love it as a comedy, people will love it as a sci-fi or purely as a 1984 adaptation or as a social criticism or as a Monty Python thing. Some of the things that doesn't work in this film is that it might be too long for some and the humor is too weird or mature for some people, but otherwise I really don't have any real gripes to it. I think it works for what it is. And I think it's the best gateway art house, not to mention my number 1 film of all time, which means I'm biased, but you know, whatever. There you have it. Those are my 5 films. I'd love to pick more, but I want to keep this video relatively short. I hate to keep you guys from watching some great movies, so I'm going to say bye, and don't forget to subscribe.